get my pen.
We're starting off really, really well on this podcast. So Annie's forgotten her paper and her pen. And I'm coping with this by petting my dog.
Don't worry, we can both go to therapy afterwards.
Yay, therapy!
And now for a word from our sponsor at betterhelp.com. We're traumatised every time we do this. I don't think it would just be like a nice light kind of conversation. It's just me and you, really, isn't it?
It's just us chatting stuff, you know. Like it's just. I imagine this is like we've gone out, we're in a restaurant. It's the middle of the day, so it's not massively busy, but we're just having a nice little chat about our craft and how we got here and that sort of thing.
I think it's basically a conversation that we've wanted to have for a long time, isn't it? And just never round to properly.
It's that thing. It was like I had no idea that Andy was a writer until our mutual friend Gina pointed it out, and I was like, "Oh, do you do script writing?" I was like, "Oh, Andy does it too." I'm like, "There's somebody else. I thought I was all alone." So, ever since that point onwards, I think our bond just got stronger. I mean, it was strong beforehand, but like it's getting even stronger now. We've got shared interests, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like I've never really come across people who do script writing or writing in general outside of my friends group. You know, it's all something that's been on the internet. So to have someone in that circle who's in the same creative sphere,
I think it's that thing is like writing in its own is a very solitary process, or it can be a very solitary process. And then you're constantly chasing that kind of validation of like, what I've written, is it good? Is it good? Is it good? And then just getting a sea of nothing sometimes. And normally nothing doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Nothing just means that no one's grabbed it yet. Or it could be many different reasons. We'll go into that in more detail at some point, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, do we have a name for this podcast? Putting Andy on the spot now.
I mean, I thought my washing podcast was quite funny earlier.
Yeah, Andy was just going to give me a load of washing labels I had to read out in my ASMR voice. Dry clean only.
Luckily, we're only doing it with the t-shirts right now.
I'm not going too crazy. I'm not putting my satin tuxedo in just yet.
You can't wash that. That's hand wash only.
Yeah, we wouldn't spend an hour just me going wash and dry, inside out. Dark colours separately dry promptly. Iron on reverse only. Do not iron prints. That would be the podcast.
That sent me to sleep. Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't got a name just yet, but it's just going to be like the writing podcast. There'll be better names as we think of it.
Creative thinkers. We're not being very creative right now.
We've called this a rare moment where we've all got writer's block and we can't think of a name for the podcast.
Just the podcast.
The podcast, yeah. We don't need anything else, just the podcast, full stop. That's it, that's our name.
We can do a deep dive into the meaning of it on a later episode.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Right, the uses of the word the.
And podcast was originally originated from a word from 1970, blah, 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 blah.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yes, Abraham Lincoln. This is
the phrase.
This is a very weird intro, but you know what? It's fine. We're keeping things fast and loose here. That's what she said. And should we just start by saying like what got us into kind of creative writing and how we got here, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Do you want to do it in like a slight Q&A way?
We can do it in a slight Q&A way. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that.
All right. So, what's the first thing you remember writing?
Okay, so I think the earliest thing I was always writing stories and stuff like that, which sounds like a generic thing that a lot of writers say. I was always writing stories when I was a little kid. I remember like I used to write. What did I used to write? I used to write like action movies, but like from a 4-year-old's perspective, so they were always rubbish. But it was literally just I've rehashed a James Bond film or I've rehashed a Spy Kids film and I've made like my own little fan fiction of it, but under different names and characters, stuff like that. As a kid, and then obviously as I got older, I used to. This is a very nerdy thing. I used to do, the manuals that used to come with video games. I used to redo those, but in my own style for fictional video games. Because
I love that.
Very, very nerdy, and I know it's very, it's a bit sad, but that's what I used to do in my teenage years, stuff like that. And I think the thing that made me want to go, ooh. Yes, creative writing, this is maybe one of the careers for me. I think it was a web series that was out, I think started in 2003. So I would have been well into my teenage years at that point. No, it would have been 14, 15, I think, when this came out originally. I didn't actually see this until later on, but it originally came out in 2003. It was a web series that was based in... It was a mini cinema of Halo, and it was called Red vs. Blue. And that was
yes.
It was a web series that ran for a couple of years. I think it's still going now. But I remember my best friend had the box set of the first 6 seasons of Red vs. Blue. And I had no idea what it was. I hadn't watched it when it was on the website. I hadn't watched it when it was on YouTube and stuff like that. I only watched it from my DVD box set. And I absolutely... Like, you know when you rewatch the same... You know when kids rewatch the same movie over and over and over and over again until they wear it out, basically? I did that, but with the box set. And that's kind of what sprouted the seed in my head of like, oh, I could write this. You find out kind of how the process of how that web show was made. And it's like just like 5 guys in a spare bedroom somewhere and did this in their spare time when they were working in IT. I was like, this is such a great, relatable kind of story. I want a piece of that, basically. So that's kind of where it started from. When I was moved more into like script writing and more of a media-based side of it. I was also writing novels as well at that point. So again, along the same lines as I mentioned beforehand, like action movies, I do my own kind of novel in an action movie style. I did a self-insert, but I did a self-insert of my friends as well as myself as the main characters, just basically doing an action movie, that sort of thing. I did that as like I was going to do like a whole series of stuff like that. I had it all planned out in my head. I was going to be a little showrunner. I was going to have like a whole series of movies, stuff like that. Never finished the first script, but I was going to do a whole series of movies on this action movie kind of premise. And then I think as I got into university, a really good website to go for references and stuff like that. Not so much, I don't think, really for kind of like getting into the industry, but like kind of knowing how the industry works is the BBC Writers' Room website.
Yeah, that's a great little resource, that.
It's an amazing resource, it really is. And during my uni years, I used to go onto that website, read the blogs, read the scripts that are on there, and kind of get a taster for like what I should be writing and kind of get the formatting down and like how you could basically form a script out of something and how you get your idea on paper and then how that translates to the screen. I think I actually did I made a sitcom. I write the script for it at the end of university and I submitted it to BBC. And I heard nothing from it. But it was a sitcom script, basically like I'd done Scrubs but in a pizzeria. That was basically the main premise behind it.
Have you still got this script?
I probably got it knocking around somewhere. I think it was called, what was it called? Dom John's Delight Hut, I think it was. And you can kind of figure out where I got the title from. It's probably knocking around somewhere. I look back on it now and I cringe because like some of the stuff I put in there is just not to the quality that I'd put it up now. I submitted it to the BBC Writers' Room at the university. Heard nothing from it, and I thought that was it then. I didn't submit anything to anywhere else past that point. I'm trying to have to get over that now. Then I left university, and then in 2017 I joined a YouTube group, and I've been writing scripts for that channel, and I've been appearing in their videos. I was going more on the kind of like the influencer side then. Then I've gone into another channel as well, my own channel. And I'm doing the editing and the writing for that as well. I say my own channel. I'll share it with my husband, Ashley. I've got to the point now where I'm kind of like the captain of my own ship when it comes to like writing stuff like that. So I'm kind of getting back into kind of like writing for TV. And also a little bit of novel writing as well. But I think it's mostly TV writing at the moment that I'm focusing on at the moment. How about you, Andy?
You'll ever rewrite the pizzeria?
Oh God, I've got to find that script now, haven't I? I've got to find it. And
I'm very intrigued by it.
For prosperity, I'm going to let Andy read it and just finish the last page and just look at me like, what is this? What have you done?
It'll either be an undiscovered masterpiece that I think needs to be out there, or I'm going to get very drunk and do a drunken reading for you.
Oh, please do that. Like drunken dramatic reading would be amazing. But enough about me. How about you, Andy? How did you get into this process?
It's the same kind of background there with the whole, I've always been writing, but I don't quite remember when I started writing. English language was always like my favourite subject at school.
I got an A. Just saying.
Did you? Awesome. Never accomplished an A.
I've only got 2 A's in my entire life. That was for English language and religious studies. That was it.
I got 1 for psychology, but that's a whole different story.
Ooh, well, okay. Actually, that's where I want to.
So I do remember being in primary school and we were writing short stories at primary school. You know how like probably 5 or 6 year olds can write stories, even slightly older than that. And I remember that the very first story that I can recall that I wrote was about a boy who he was very lonely. He was being bullied at school, and he found a phoenix in the street one day, and the phoenix became his best friend.
Aww.
I don't know where that story is. I do know it got printed into a book that you take home to your parents, and it's probably somewhere in someone's dusty attic.
As things tend to be. They tend to be hidden away somewhere.
It's the parental hoard.
Yes.
That only comes out to embarrass you. There was also a time where I had to submit a poem. I think most schools in England go through this, where this publishing company will come in, everyone will write a poem, and
Yes.
majority of them get published. My mum still has that, and she takes great delight in bringing it out every time.
That's something that I think I still have. The poetry competition that everyone goes through in the UK. That at some point, like Andy was saying, they'll have this competition where you have to submit some poetry, or sometimes a short story, and it'll get featured in like a annual in a newspaper or something like that. I think I still have.
Yeah.
I think I still have my booklet, and a booklet of other probably in my college as well of the poems that we submitted as well.
I know exactly where my mum's copy is. Unfortunately, it was around the time of 9/11 when that all happened. So a lot of the people's poems were quite focused on that and their experiences of it going around.
Okay.
You know, because it's so big in the media.
You can't escape it, yeah.
Yeah, and so nestled in between all these like quite heartfelt poems is my little ditty about fancying a boy.
Sometimes we need that little bit of brevity, especially in that period of history as well. We needed some kind of like comedy as well.
Yeah, when I look back at it now, I'm just like, what on earth was I thinking? And who thought this was good?
Yeah, but you were young and stuff like that. Like it makes sense to the time period that it was. So I'm not going to give you any kind of stick for it.
I give myself enough stick for it. I'm hoping that my mum won't show my current partner this book.
You do know that she will do this every anniversary, every big event.
Yeah.
If she can find it, she'll bring it out.
Yep. If we fast forward a few years, there's a bit of dabbling in writing between all that. Again, English language being my favourite subject at school, and I love that creative assignments that we'd always get.
Yes.
And then we hit the teenage years where I discover fanfic.net.
So I'm guessing the next section of your life will be My Immortal and adjacent to that.
Revelations coming soon. It was quite a good experience for me, actually. I take quite a lot of positives from fanfic.net because you're not quite at that confidence stage where you've got your own ideas well, at least for me. I've not got that confidence in my own ideas. So to dive into the fan fiction world, there's pre-established characters where my imagination rolls off like, oh, they've got these massive backstories that no one goes into, or there's potential for future stories that no one goes into. Dabble a little bit there, and that's what really honed my writing skills.
I definitely agree with that sort of thing of like, people tend to like, they bash fan fiction a lot and they kind of shit on it a bit, but when you look at it, it's kind of like these people who are making the fan fiction, they want to be a writer in the future, they may just be doing it for fun, but it will learn you the format, it will learn you kind of like ways of how to develop a character and kind of like playing around with characters. You don't have to worry about doing their whole entire backstory because most of it's been done for them. It's a nice kind of like springboard into actually doing it professionally and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I quite enjoyed reading it as well. It's again, it's a whole sphere of creativity that's just right in front of you all the time. It's not just you go into the library or go into a bookshop to buy a pre-established book. You've got you're inundated with a massive amount of stories and creativity there.
Absolutely.
So that kind of petered off after a while. I sort of lost interest in it. And that's when I started branching out into my own stories. And as life goes on, I entered the adult world of having a career, you know, working full time.
Life goes on.
Absolutely does. And my writing life fell by the wayside. I would still scribble every now and again. I still wanted to be a writer. So there's always that, oh, I wish I could write that, or, you know, I wish I had the time to write that. And I got so focused on my career, my relationship, my life progressing as an adult, you know, getting that house, getting the picket fence kind of life.
Yeah.
It was only when I was in my mid-20s that I picked up writing again.
I think that's a similar situation for me. Like when I started on the YouTube stuff and doing the, I hate the word, but the social influencing part of my life, which is just
the content creator.
Content creator, I like that better. That sounds more like me. I'm not a social influencer. That's everybody. But that part of my life, that's kind of like I'm trying to think of the word of it now. it's such a kind of like condensed kind of part of my life and that sort of thing. Is like the need to write for me rather than for something that's going to be uploaded or something that's going to go streamed or something like that. That kind of fell by the wayside, and I was kind of doing things as a necessity rather than things that I actually want to do. I still like doing this sort of thing, but it was at that point in my life, it was becoming everything. Everything was that. I didn't have any time for writing, that sort of thing. And as you mentioned just now, as I'm getting into my late 20s, maybe 30s, I'm getting the need now. I've got more freedom to go back into the writing kind of thing now. I'm having moments to myself where I can do it.
I wouldn't say I've got the freedom right now, but I've definitely got the passion and the motivation now.
Absolutely.
Because life just takes you in different directions all the time. You can't
never know
quite
what's going to
keep
go
up.
out.
You just roll with it. Unfortunately, writing's one of those things that just fell by the wayside with it.
That's the thing. Is like no one's got. I don't think anybody's got the stereotype of. Okay, so I'm a writer, so I have to write whenever I'm in a coffee shop wearing a beanie hat in Starbucks with a laptop open, just waiting for the inspiration to strike. It's like it's normally I'm going to bed or I need to go to bed, but I want to write something. I've just woken up, I need to write something, or I'm commuting. That's when I normally get the urge that I need to write.
I did try the whole sitting in a coffee shop with my laptop once, mind you.
I've never done it. How was it like?
It was overwhelming. There was just too much noise, and the coffee machine was constantly going, and I would find myself getting distracted by my coffee cup, and it was just a nightmare. It was not the right environment for me.
I don't think I can do that either. I think for me, it's too open. It's too kind of like, I don't want people over... It develops from like your teenage years, but I don't want people looking over my shoulder going, oh, he's writing. Oh, I wonder what he's writing. Either they steal my ideas or they go, can I be a character in your thing? I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, yes.
Can you remember that from childhood? Like people finding out you're writing something and they're going like, can I be a character in it? I'm like, no, I barely know you.
I get that all the time at work at the moment.
Oh my God.
So I'm trying to embrace this writer's life. I'm trying to say, live that authentic, creative life that's me. And whenever I introduce myself to someone, I'm not like, hi, I'm Andy. I'm working this job. Hi, I'm Andy. I want to be a writer. I love writing. That always makes up that core introduction of me.
That's a really unique introduction as well, because that's something that people can then go and be like, you're a writer? What do you do? That sort of thing. And it can open up conversations where they just go, hi, I'm Andy, I work here. And it's kind of like closed off. It's kind of a little bit like, okay.
Well, the truth is, when people say, oh, what's that like? It's like you just sit and stare at a blank page for 5 hours and hope that you write one word.
And in your head, you've written a masterpiece, but you've not actually wrote it down yet.
Yeah. Oh, in my head, there's an absolute bank of work in my head that's all completed, dusted, published. It's amazing. I'm a bestseller.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on paper, not so much.
People are feigning in the street for you. There are parades in your honour.
Oh. I've sold many scripts, and
I think that's like quite a common belief as well. Like, if you're a writer, or if you're aspiring to be a writer as well, that you want that kind of like recognition. It's something to strive for, isn't it? It's nice to daydream and be like, well, I could do this and I could be on this. Nothing bad about it.
The next Stephen King.
Next Stephen next Stephen King.
Next. Well, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. There's a lot of hard work to put into it before you even get that first script sold or to that first novel sold.
I think that's a big life lesson as well, if you want to be a writer as well. Your first rejection stays with you for the rest of your life. Because you're constantly going, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. But there is comfort to know that even though it's been rejected, or if even it's been accepted, somebody has read your work, and has taken the time out of their day to read your work and have an opinion on it. There are a lot of writers who'll get to the point where they've written something, they're really, really happy about it, and they'll put it in a drawer and ignore it. So the fact that I managed to submit something, or if anyone's tried to submit something, you got something over those writers that just kind of put it in a drawer and forget about it.
Oh, absolutely. It takes a lot of, not courage, but similar type of courage in the same sense, to do that, to put yourself out there, because you're quite vulnerable with your writing.
I was going to say exactly the same
There's
thing.
always a part of you when you're writing, no matter how far removed from the topic, from the genre that you are, there's always that little part of you that's in there. So to send it out to someone for reviewing or for feedback, it's a big deal.
It's your baby. It's like putting your baby out into the wild to fend for itself.
Yeah.
And it's very daunting. It's like you want people to see it and have a positive reaction to it. Sometimes you don't get a reaction at all, and you have to kind of have that kind of resilience. Like, it's okay, I'll try again. I'll try with somebody else, or I'll try with a completely different new idea. There is that kind of pitfall with writing stuff like that. It's like, it could be amazing. You've written it, you've finished it, but then if nobody sees it, it's like, do you have the motivation to keep going with it?
Yeah, you need that external validation in some respects.
Exactly.
I think one of the hardest things that I'm experiencing right now is the silence. So I've written 2 scripts now. I've written a short film script and I've written a comedy pilot.
Yeah.
Which Finn has read.
I have read, and I, in my unbiased opinion, think it's amazing. And I just wish it was in production now so I can see it and show everybody else it. Thank
you. So I sent it out to a lot of agents. Last month I spent quite a long time just hunting down all the contact details, all the websites, going through, the writers and artists yearbook, trying to find the right agencies to send it to get some feedback, or to hopefully for someone to pick it up. And the silence is absolutely deafening to me. There's rejection, which is thanks but no thanks, and then there's a rejection from silence, which I think is a lot harder.
It's definitely a lot harder.
Discourages a lot more.
But again, I think it's a double-edged sword as well, because it's like you'll occasionally get parts of the year where people are asking for certain scripts, stuff like that, and you'll submit it and you'll get a rejection letter. But then for somebody who's not doing it because they want to do it to a particular competition, or they want to do it because they're requesting it, they just want to do it, get it out there, it is so much harder when you get absolutely nothing back. Not even a rejections letter saying thanks, no thanks. Because even that is a response, that's fine. I'm absolutely fine with people rejecting things, but the minute it's like get nothing back, that, like you said, it's absolutely deafening. It's like, hello? It's like, is there anybody still there? Kind of thing.
It's like you've got your face pressed against the window and you're pulling faces just to try and get attention. Just, hello? Attention.
It's like that moment in Doctor Who with Donna and the Doctor making faces to each other over the office, but between windows. It's like that, but there's no response.
It's a very one-way kind of process.
It is. But I would like to, obviously, it may seem a little doom and gloom saying that, but I want to commend Andie on that, because she's got that one step further, whereas I submitted a script to a BBC Writers' Room, got a thanks, no thanks, and then stopped for a period of time before I picked it back up again. Whereas Andie's taken that and be like, no, I'm gonna get someone to see this, and actually track down agents and production companies and TV studios, that sort of thing, to try and get it seen as well. So you've gone that one extra step further than me.
It took a lot of courage, that's for sure. I remember the very first one I sent was actually to ITV Submissions, and I was sat there hovering over the button for a long time, and I kept putting my finger really close to it and then going, nope, I'm going to go make a cup of tea. And then I got really close again, and then I literally squealed and went, nope, we can't do this.
I've done that
a lot.
I think I've done that a long time, where I've got something important that I need to send or say, something like that. I will hover over the send button for an inordinate amount of time before I actually do it. So right there with
it's not a very physical thing, is it, these days? Like with touch screens being so flat, there's no tactile contact or anything. So there's nothing that resonated in that sense, but it's such a big deal.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
I haven't heard anything back.
And again, how long ago did you submit the last time?
The last one I sent was approximately 4 weeks ago. Now, I did read somewhere that the industry standard is between 6 and 12 weeks.
So you're still within that kind of period?
Yeah, I'm just really keen.
I know. I would be sorry. I said I wasn't coughing. I'm coughing again. The thing is, like, you're still within the period of them responding back to you. But again, I forgot what I was going to say now. I've completely lost my train of thought.
It's that cough. You just lost all your creativity at that cough.
I coughed out a few brain cells and now I've completely forgotten where I'm going to. But yeah, it's like there is a bit of a backlog as well, because there is a kind of resistance on the other side where it's like they probably receive a load, like thousands and thousands of like unsolicited scripts every single year. And the only way they can really get through them is to either put like a certain like window as like we'll accept them for this period or for this theme or whatever, or just rejecting them. And again, it falls back into our previous point of like you gotta have that kind of resilience and motivation to keep going forward, even if you get rejected millions and millions and millions of times. I'm gonna stop drinking my Monster because it's just making me cough for the entire podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure you can edit that out.
I'm gonna leave it in. I'm gonna leave it in as a warning to myself.
So now that we've kind of given an overview of where we are as writers,
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your writing process, because getting from that idea to that page one, that's a very important step for any writer, isn't it?
It really is. Like I said, that's what separates the thinkers from writers. I've seen a meme about that recently this week, where it's like you've got the same person as like one person going, "I've got a really good idea for a story," and then the next day it's like, "I've got a really good idea for a story," and it goes on and on and on for like a whole week with them not changing. They're just thinking about the idea. And you've got another person where it's like writer on the top of it says, "I've got a really good idea for a story." Day one, written the first page. Day two, written the third page. And it goes on and on and on and on. Getting past that point where you're like, I've got an idea for a story to I've written something is a really difficult thing to do when you're just starting out as well.
So what's your process like?
I like to plan a lot. I think when I was a kid, I didn't plan at all. I just kind of like wrote like a complete stream of consciousness and just wrote whatever I felt like writing. A lot of people work in different ways. I work now where I like to plan it out first, or plan out a scene first, before I then write it. Because I feel like if I write it as a stream of consciousness, what I end up getting is shit. So I like to kind of plan it out first and then kind of hit certain points. So at the moment, I'm writing a scene that's based in like a police incident room. And what I want out of the scene is basically a giant info dump. But I don't want the scene to play as a giant info dump. So I'm trying to kind of separate it out and split it up so it's a little bit more interesting to view, basically. So I will plan what each character has to say, what the important point is, before I then go in and actually write the dialogue in between. Which I found it a lot easier to do. I feel like if I didn't do that, it would just come across as, here's information. This is a boring scene, cut it. So I like to plan things out. I also tend to overwrite a lot. And that's just something that I've always done. I think Andy will attest to this as well.
Absolutely.
I am definitely on that thing of like, less is more is not something that I do. I think more is should be less. I'm the other way around. So I will write this giant paragraph of like description and how a scene is supposed to be set up and that sort of thing. And then I'll get into the main body of the scene. I think that comes from obviously having to do media studies at university. I've seen it from both the writing point of view and the production point of view. So I will both to try and wear two hats at the same time. That's probably where my overwriting comes from. But yeah, to go back to the original point of what my process is, at the moment it's like planning out certain scenes or planning out an overview of a story and then getting through it. Just so I can write something on the page, even if it's not going to go in the story, even if it's just going to be there as a note for myself. If I've written something down, I feel like that's an achievement.
There's that old adage of write up, edit down.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to. Thank you, Andy.
That's absolutely edit down. You.
But
you've just got to get to that edit.
Yeah, that edit's going to be brutal. Stuff in there I'm like, don't need this, don't need that, don't need this.
So say you've got like that very first idea, you got that spark of an idea, you're sat at your computer, you've got that page in front of you, that white page, very intimidating white page. What's the first thing that you go for?
So the first thing I'd go for, that's a good question actually. I have to think about this actually.
Do you dive straight into the action, or do you work on that establishing shot?
I think I'm more of a person of like starting, it's not really starting in the middle, but starting with action first and then going back to it or going around it, that sort of thing. I like starting in the middle of a piece of action. I feel that's more dynamic than just static shot of building. Depends on the scenario. If it's like a horror movie set in a haunted house, then that could be a very effective opening. But I don't really write that much horror, so I like to start in the middle of a piece of action that starts the story. And then go from there, I think. That's what I like to do.
You're a big fan of the on media res.
Yes. That is
quite a good little technique, that. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good little technique, that, because you're hooking the reader or the producer or whoever's reading your script, you're hooking them straight away. The feet are running.
That's the thing, yeah. They sometimes when you're a young writer to the young ones, there is that kind of pitfall, that trap of starting at the story at the start of the story and introducing all the characters, and then they're doing their first job or they're doing their first like action of this thing. Sometimes that can work. If it's a pilot for a TV episode, great way to start. If it's a long series like that, people kind of already know what the premise of the show is going to be. So starting off going, this is this guy, he does this, it's like we know. Move on. So I do like the idea of starting in the middle of an action piece because it starts the story away. You don't have to do any introductions. People start off going, oh, what's going on? Immediately hooked.
Yeah, and you've got these pre-established characters. You're not doing all that building work, but you still have to weave in their backstories and who they are through that opening action.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you find that to be quite difficult
Sometimes it does, yeah. There are a couple of characters in the script that I'm working on at the moment where I've written them down. I know what their story arc's going to be, but in terms of making them an actual character and not just a 2D person, it's a difficult bit at the moment. Trying to figure out what their backstory is, how they fit into the story that's not just plot related, is a difficult thing at the moment.
Yeah. I think viewers and readers can sniff out a plot device like that.
Oh yeah, no, everybody in the world knows the episode that's literally just there for ratings. Where it's like, here is the brother I never spoke about. Here is the cousin we never speak about. But she's in this episode just to bring up the ratings or something like that. Everyone's seen that before.
Then they vanish again shortly afterwards.
They vanish just as quickly as they turned up, yeah.
Thinking of, have you seen Gossip Girl?
I've heard of Gossip Girl. I haven't seen it, but yes, go on.
They introduce a half-brother character, and he's sort of there for a few episodes, and then he's gone.
The one I was thinking of was an episode of Frasier. There was a very, very, very famous plot mistake where early on in the series, I think Frasier's dad says, "I never had a brother." And then a couple of seasons later, his brother is miraculously introduced. And I was like, but you just said he didn't have a brother? So it's like, it's a very obvious plot device. There's a question I've got for you. Is like, what do you think is the most difficult part for you of actually writing your thing? What's the most difficult bit for you?
Writing it.
Just
I know that's quite a straightforward answer in that sense. I can get really caught up in imagining it in my head. I've got these characters, I've got these stories, I'm playing it out in my head 1,000 times over, and then when it comes to actually sitting at the screen and writing, I'm like, oh no, I've forgotten words.
Yeah, I have that as well, whereas, like I said, I like to listen to a lot of music whilst I'm commuting and when I'm walking places, stuff like that. That's also where kind of my imagination goes wild and I start thinking of these scenarios. But then it also gets to that point of like, I know the scenario in my head is great and wonderful, but I don't know how I can physically put that on the page and make it seem as fantastical as it does in my head. There is that difficulty of like getting caught in that.
It's a self-confidence block, I think. It definitely is for me. So when I'm writing, because I write novels and screenplays, I'm very much an offline kind of person. So I've got notebooks, I've got paper everywhere. There's separate notebooks with separate stories, and I've recently come across an electric typewriter.
Ooh, I am jealous of you. I'm
looking forward to playing with. So I scribble notes or I scribble scenes in these different notebooks that correlate to these different stories, and then I can't even read my own handwriting on occasions.
I also am familiar with the throwaway notebook of ideas that becomes a gibberish mesh.
Yeah.
For a while.
You have to kind of pass through it and glean the story from it, and you look at the squiggles just going, now does this say cone or something completely different? What's going on here?
Or you'll just rewrite a scene you've already written in this notebook and be like, well, that's better than what I've already written. But now that I've already wrote it, I don't know how I'm going to get back into what I've just read. It's like,
Yeah. So I've got a story that I wrote a few years ago. I got a new notebook for it, and I went on holiday to, a cabin in a forest kind of holiday.
You lock yourself away, that sort of thing, yeah.
I actually did, yeah. I spent my days just watching television from the hot tub and writing, which was a glorious holiday for me.
That sounds amazing. Can I come next time?
I'm going to call it the new writer's retreat.
That's the new version of sitting in a coffee shop writing.
Yes, a much better version, that's for sure.
Much better.
I had this opening that I've rewritten approximately easily over a dozen times now at this point. I just had this idea of this scene in my head, and it's the scene that started it all. It had to be perfect for what was going on in my head, and it wasn't quite translating every single time. As I created this story, as I kept writing forward, I kept coming back to this beginning scene, rewriting it and rewriting it, and then going forward a little bit more, and then coming back to this beginning scene again. I got stuck in a loop of it.
I've definitely relate to that.
When I finally finished writing the story, the very first draft that, I don't know what you'd like to call it. I call it a vomit draft because I just vomit everything out.
I've heard somewhere that the first draft is always considered a shit. The first draft is always toilet paper, but you have to get through that bit to get to the actual gem of the story behind it.
Absolutely. The rewriting really does come in here, except for when you're rewriting that one scene over and over again.
Yeah.
I remember I finally finished writing that story one night when I got very drunk and just sat in front of my laptop and mashed out that final scene that was bothering me for so long.
Yeah.
I don't really recall writing it. When I read it back, it's actually quite cohesive, very good. It's quite in line with what I'm thinking, so I don't recommend getting drunk and writing like that, though.
Yeah, they do say don't drink and write, but I do sometimes.
It definitely loosens yourself.
It definitely loosens you up. It makes you feel freer, but there is that kind of thing of like you could do what Andy has done and have a little bit of a drink, wrote something that's actually really quite good. And then alternatively, you could have had a little bit of a drink, wrote something. It's shit.
It's more than likely going to be shit than good.
Yeah, but like I said, it gets you past that kind of point of like, I don't know how to progress from here. Like I said, it doesn't have to be alcohol, it can be any other social lubricants, probably not the wrong word, to get you through that last little bit.
Quite happy that I'd finished this story, and lucky for me, I've got a friend who's a fantastic editor, and he took my story and he gave it a very good read through. He gave me some phenomenal notes, so we might have to bring him on at some point.
Oh, please do.
We'll hook him up. I have to text him and just tell him that I've volunteered him as tribute now.
And he'll be like, yeah, sure.
So he gave me some really great notes. He went through it line by line. Like, he caught all sorts of plot holes and issues with it, which is fantastic. Every writer needs that.
That's also another thing as well that I mentioned before. But yeah, sure, getting to the end of it and getting someone to read it, great. But I think another thing as well is like having that friend that knows their stuff isn't just going to be like telling you stuff because they like you or trying not to hurt your feelings. It actually can go through your product and be like, okay, this bit doesn't line up, this bit's a bit of a plot hole, I love this bit, this is great, continue on with this, that sort of thing. It's so valuable to have friends like that that can look through your work and just like catch those things early.
Absolutely. It does get a bit awkward when you've written slightly graphic sex scene and you're trying to look your friend in the eyes, they're giving you feedback on this sex scene.
I think it'd probably be worse if the characters in that play also had the same names of the people you're giving to look over it. That would be more awkward, I think.
Definitely not good. Yeah, so he gave me all that feedback, and now I have to take that feedback, and I realise, oh no, I'm going to have to rewrite this scene again.
That's the thing, is like, the first time you realise you have to rewrite something, is like, it feels like the worst thing ever, you feel like you're a fraud, and then we actually get to the actual point of it, like, actually no, this needed doing, and I'm glad that I did do it, because now I've got a completely different version of the scene that works even better than it did beforehand.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can go into this at a deeper level at some point further in the future with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We won't be able to cover everything in one podcast. There may be others.
Depends on if they want them.
If you want more of this, please let us know. I don't know whether it's going to go on Spotify or if it's going to go on SoundCloud or whatever, but let one of us know and we'll make more. There is lots more content we can bring onto this, I feel.
Yeah, it's lovely having a conversation about writing and being so open about the difficulties of the writing process that people don't really talk about very much.
That's the thing.
But from our perspective, anyway, of being people who are unpublished and just trying to get out there.
If you are new to writing or if you haven't published anything like that, we're in the same position as you. There are a lot of podcasts where there will be like industry experts that are trying to go through like different ways of getting into the business, that sort of thing. But there is that kind of like air of like, well, you've already been published, so I can relate to how to get there, but you're not in the same position as me anymore, whereas I'm still trying to get into it. You're already there, so it'd be easier for you to get in there because you're already established.
We're here for the newbies.
Yeah, we're here for the newbies. That's it. If you're still getting into writing, that sort of thing, we're here to give you a helping hand. You know what's happening for us, how our own stuff gets published, and the progress with that sort of thing. At least I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully that we can document how well we do with it, the pitfalls that we make, the mistakes that we end up with, which, you know, everyone makes mistakes. There's going to be different routes into this industry that might work for some, others work for others. That was a very bad way of saying that.
I get what you were saying, it's fine. It's not that bad, it's fine. We'll rewrite that in editing.
Yeah, we can re-record that bit.
But yeah, there's another thing as well. We didn't actually mention like what sort of stuff we actually like writing. Like not much like scripts and novels, that sort of thing, but like what kind of genres are our kind of wheelhouse.
Mine is, I would like to say horror first. A huge horror writer. I love writing horror. And then possibly drama, and then comedy. I think they're my three top genres.
I think when I first started writing things, it was more comedy-based, more action comedies, that sort of thing. Now it's more kind of like comedy dramas, or dramedies, I think is the term. I come from more of a comedy background. I'm currently working on something that's more drama-based, but I am trying to sprinkle a little bit of comedy in there. Yeah. Do you want to tell people what we're currently working on, or do you want to kind of keep it as a mystery, Andy?
Oh, well, I'll talk about the things that I've already got out there at the moment. So have you heard of coverfly.com?
Yes, I have.
So I've got a profile on coverfly.com where I'm hosting two scripts. One is the short story that I wrote with the London Film Academy, which we'll talk about a bit later on.
Ooh, I didn't know about this. This would be interesting for another episode.
It's a drama short. And the other one is the aforementioned comedy pilot. That can be found on coverfly.com.
I still need to join up to Coverfly because I know you sent me the link for it, but I haven't done it yet, and I will be doing that.
It's quite a nifty little resource.
It does look quite interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of like success stories that have come from that website as well. So yeah, I might host something there and see what sticks.
We can talk about what it's like to use that website, I think. And also, I'm working on a horror novel, which is based in a haunted mansion.
You can go in millions of different ways with a haunted mansion. Like I said, I don't think that's a tired trope yet.
I like to think I've got a different twist on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what are you working on?
So at the moment, I am working on. I think I'm only working on one thing at the moment because other things, life things, get in the way. But at the moment, I'm working on a police procedural drama series. At the moment, I'm I think, halfway through the pilot for it. The first draft, sorry, not the pilot, of that series. I have overwritten a lot, so I need to go back into it and edit it down with like a machete. But
when you're finished.
when I'm finished, I had that's another pitfall as well, as I'll go through it and I'll edit it as I'm making it, and then I've got to try and like make peace with myself. Like, you can go back to it later. Stop picking at it. Just get to the end of it and then go back to it later. But yeah, so I'm working on that at the moment. I've pretty much got the entire story written out and in my head, but it's not on the page yet. I was working on a novel as well, but I think I'll probably put that down I put that on the wayside at the moment. But I was working on like another like action movie kind of, but novel, like a thriller. That's what I was looking for. I couldn't find the word for thriller.
He is a writer, honest.
I'm working on a thriller as well in the background. I haven't really touched that for a while, but that's what I'm working on as well. Any
balls to juggle there?
I was about to say, and if you know me, I like to juggle balls. And I was like, no, I'm cutting that bit out. That's too much.
Oh, it's going to be a great blooper reel.
Yeah. Just cut them all out and put them at the end.
It's just going to be like smash cuts of you going balls. Every point
balls.
that Finn says ball. Cut it all together into a ball reel.
I'm just going to do a cough reel as well, every single time I've coughed in this podcast.
Cough edit.
If anyone's got any ideas of what we could call this podcast as well, because we still have no ideas as to what we're going to call it, that would be a good idea as well. If you put them in the comments of where we end up putting this.
Sure, we can host a poll somewhere too.
We could put a poll somewhere, and then you can decide on what you want to call the podcast, or what we should call the podcast.
Don't worry, we'll get a bit more structured as things go on.
This is kind of like a nice, lovely chat, as we mentioned at the beginning. Kind of ease ourselves into it. There's no kind of like proper structure or anything like that. We're just having a chat and conversation. Other episodes will probably have more of a conversation, more of a schedule. Sorry.
Yeah, and we'll try and bring on a few guests. Like I said, I've got the editor friend who I might try and drag in.
That might be a good.
Would love to
good thing.
Hear from other people who are out there on the same kind of journey we are.
Yeah, maybe get some guest stars and stuff like that are writing adjacent or us adjacent, if it wants it to be in the podcast.
It's exciting.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to what's coming up in the future, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this takes us.
And I'm really thankful that I've got a friend that's into this as much as I am, because it was such a lonely process of being the only one that's into scripts until I met Andy.
This is going to be fun.
Talk
things, writing and scripts.
Well, I hope we're going to like build each other up and that sort of thing, and we're both in it for the ride.
Absolutely.
Should we do a closed off?
Yeah, what should we do for a close off?
I'm just like put a sound effect at me like leaving the room, put the light off. It's like, nope.
So you're going to become a Foley artist now. You know what I could do? We could record some of the audio from the typewriter as well.
Ooh, that would be good. That would be good. Do a little typewriter tapping in the background. Yeah.
What about something like, thanks for joining us in this little conversation. And hopefully you're going to join us on the path to publication.
Ooh, on the path to publication. I like that. I like that one.
Ooh.
Okay,
that's
we'll
a good title.
We'll do that. Okay, right. I've been
Hi
Finn.
guys, I've been Andy. Thanks
So-
for joining us in this conversation.
And hopefully you'll join us on the path to publication. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. And as promised, here are a couple of the outtakes and things that didn't go quite so well during the podcast. Hope you enjoy and listen to the next one in the future. But instead of it being one character, I did it with... Excuse me. Just burped.
I
did it with-
for real.
I did it with methane. I did it with... Excuse me, sorry. I decided to swallow a monster exactly the wrong moment down the wrong hole. That was the wrong point. Sorry, as you were.
Trying to be all emotional here, Finn.
I'm just ruining the moment now, just coughing in the background.
I'm pouring my heart and soul out to my fan fiction. And you're just mocking it.
Sorry. As you were. Sorry. I'm trying and return some decorum to the podcast.
It's a professional.
I've done all my coughing now.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I might start coughing soon. Join in.
She's going to wait until I get to like a really heartfelt moment in my other part of the podcast where I'm speaking. She'll go going, ah! In fact.
Yeah, when we start to talk about your emotional resonance in your writing, I'm going to burp down the microphone. Resonate with that.
You know what? I know you, so I know that's what's going to happen as well. I know exactly what's going to happen. Ghost, why are you licking the sofa? What are you doing?
It must taste good.
You're licking the sofa.
Aww.
Ghosty. Is it because I'm
Think-
paying attention?
Aww. Giving big fusses from me.
I am. I'll give you a big fuss. This is from Andy. I went a little bit common then. So from Andy.
Common. Different voices, eh?
Different voices. This is my posh receptionist voice. And then this is the voice that I use. No, I don't.
He does.
You can't prove that. Do you want to do the path for publication bit or do you want me to do it?
So I say thanks for joining us for this conversation.
And hopefully you'll join us on the path of publication.
Poets.
Okay, all right.
Do you want a second one?
Oh, I thought that was... Sorry.
You can have another one if you want, just for the...
We'll do another one just for safety, it's fine.